Here's what's coming up on the world today. The UK delivers ventilators and oxygen equipment to India as the country continues to grapple record numbers of coronavirus cases. Belgium bans travellers from Brazil, India and South Africa over COVID-19 variants and cases. Plus, international rights watchdog accuses Israel of pursuing policies of apartheid and persecution against Palestinians. A warm welcome to the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. India has received its first supply of international aid to help its failing health system as ventilators and oxygen equipment landed in Delhi today. Many of the country's hospitals, especially in Delhi, are overwhelmed with coronavirus cases still running in high numbers.
India's coronavirus surge is hitting many homes where many have called for help, and there's been no response. People in New Delhi are crying out for help as there's no room for relatives in the city's hospitals.
And my father is in a very critical condition. I'm getting no help. Numbers are given there, but nobody is responding. Numbers are not reachable. Please help me, please. My father is dying. I can't afford another loss. Yesterday I lost my younger brother.
But there's been response from the international community. Earlier today, a shipment of vital medical supplies arrived in New Delhi from the United Kingdom, including 100 ventilators and 95 oxygen concentrators. Over the past 24 hours, India has recorded over 323,144 new cases, slightly below a worldwide peak of 352,991 on Monday, with overrun hospitals turning away patients due to a shortage of beds and oxygen. The United States says it will start to share up to 60 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine with other countries as soon as the next few weeks. But it also has India in mind.
We are continuing to look for a range of ways to help India. So we're talking about what we can redirect, what is available now. A lot of what they need at this moment is oxygen.
Australia has suspended all direct passenger flights from India until May 15, following a surge in cases. Last week, it announced it will cut the number of its citizens able to return from India and other red zone countries to contain the risk or more virulent strains of COVID-19 spreading. The World Health Organization says the situation in India is beyond heartbreaking. Director General of the Global Health Agency, Tedros Ghebreyesus, says the WHO is sending extra staff and supplies to India to help fight the pandemic.
And the situation in India is beyond heartbreaking. WHO is doing everything we can, providing critical equipment and supplies, including thousands of oxygen concentrators, prefabricated mobile field hospitals, and laboratory supplies. As I mentioned on Friday, WHO has redeployed more than 2,600 staff to support the response on the ground, providing support for surveillance, technical advice, and vaccination efforts.
Meanwhile, people continue to flout social distancing norms at a Hindu religious gathering, although crowds were noticeably smaller than previous events. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has refused to call off the festival as COVID-19 cases surge, possibly fearing a backlash from religious leaders in the Hindu-majority country. And in neighboring Nepal, health workers grapple with the rapid rise of COVID-19 cases as experts fear that thousands of people in the Himalayan state have caught the more infectious mutant strains emerging out of India.
For the second time since the start of the pandemic, Portugal has reported no deaths in the past 24 hours. The Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, says if all goes well, then the Portuguese are a week from entering a definitive phase in reopening. Even the UK has reported fewest COVID deaths since October. The Office of National Statistics today announced 402 deaths involving COVID-19 were registered in the week to April 16. Here's a global update.
The global update begins in the United States, which has administered over 230.7 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines in the country as of Monday. The figure is up from 228,661,408 vaccine doses the Center for Disease Control says has gone into arms by Sunday out of 290,692,005 doses delivered. The CDC tally includes 2-dose vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech, as well as Johnson & Johnson's one-shot vaccine. China says it's open to India and other South Asian countries participating in a virtual conference on fighting the pandemic. The foreign ministers of China, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are meeting via video link today to exchange views on fighting the pandemic. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization plans to release its assessment results of the Chinese COVID vaccines, Sinopharm and CoronaVac, in 2 weeks. Turkey's president has imposed a nationwide full closure until May 17, including a continuous lockdown, school closures, and intercity travel restrictions to curb a surge in the virus cases and deaths. Turkey logged 37,312 new infections and 353 deaths in the last 24 hours, sharply down from mid-April, but still the world's fourth highest number of cases and the worst on a per capita basis amongst major nations. Finally, museums and theaters are welcoming back the people of Rome after the government eased restrictions after a relaxation of restrictions on many businesses and cultural venues in many Italian regions, including Lazio. Residents did not miss the opportunity to enjoy their stunning and unique cultural heritage. Italy has registered 119,539 deaths linked to COVID since its outbreak emerged in February last year, the second highest toll in Europe after Britain and the seventh highest in the world.
The World Health Organization says millions of children whose immunizations have been disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in Africa, are now at risk from life-threatening diseases such as measles, polio, yellow fever and diphtheria. Gaps in vaccination coverage have already led to serious measles outbreaks in Pakistan and Yemen and are likely to lead to more epidemics as more regular childhood vaccinations are missed.
Even as COVID-19 vaccines give us hope of light at the end of the tunnel, the pandemic has caused several disruptions to immunization services around the world. New WHO data shows that as a result of COVID-19, 60 immunization campaigns are currently suspended in 50 countries. That means about 228 million children are vulnerable right now to deadly vaccine-preventable diseases such as measles, yellow fever, and polio.
And as countries continue to announce measures to protect citizens against the coronavirus, Belgium has tightened its ban on entry for people traveling from Brazil, India, and Southern Africa. For passenger traffic by air, train, ship, and bus, including transit traffic from the 3 countries, is no longer possible. Also, traveling to Belgium from countries outside the European Union is only allowed if it is labeled as essential travel, among others for diplomats, transport personnel, and seafarers. Away from the coronavirus, the European Parliament is expected to ratify the post-Brexit EU-UK trade deal today amid tensions, including a French threat of reprisals against the UK. France's Europe Minister Clement Beaune, accuses the UK of blocking fishing rights. He says the EU could respond with reprisals in financial services. The trade and cooperation agreement has been operating provisionally since January and is expected to be ratified by members of Parliament today. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the trade agreement between the EU and Britain will give each side tools to ensure compliance with that accord and the Brexit divorce deal between the two.
This agreement comes with real teeth, with a binding dispute settlement mechanism and the possibility for unilateral remedial measures where necessary. And let me be very clear, we do not want to have to use these tools, but we will not hesitate to use them if necessary. This agreement on paper is only as good as implementation and enforcement in practice. And I share the concerns you have on unilateral actions taken by the United Kingdom since the agreement came into provisional application. Environmental protection.
The viewers, Lisa Bright is in Paris for us. Lisa, has Britain owned up to blocking fishing rights for France, and where do both stand right now?
Hi, it's nice to be back with channels. Okay, so where do things stand right now? Not very good. The UK essentially says it's not blocking the fishing issues. What it's saying is that fishermen from France need to get a license to fish. That's the deal. However, to get a license, if you're a fisherman, you have to show 5 years worth of electronic footprints, essentially, that you've been fishing in Britain over 5 steady years before the 2016 Brexit vote. What French fishermen are saying is, hey, it's really hard to do this. And they say the majority of the fishermen who want to fish in British waters because it's considered very rich in fish, they said we can't get there. So they're really angry. The French government, as you noted, is also angry, and the French are threatening to, do a tit-for-tat financial services issue for Britain, because Britain is very dependent on financial services in terms of what it can offer Europe. And last week, the French fishermen were blocking exports, UK trucked exports of seafood coming in to this area, the major seafood processing plant in Europe, which is in France. So it's a very complicated, tangled issue. Sentiments are very high. Both sides claim that they are correct, and so far we have not found a resolution for this. So this is one of many sticking points right now in a rather unhappy divorce, even though it's already happened.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Lisa. But the TCA has been operating provisionally, and, well, it should be ratified today, fingers crossed. But France is not the only one which has problems with trade with Britain. Northern Ireland is yet to understand where it stands with trade. How has the EU tried to resolve these issues?
Yeah, the Northern Ireland issue is extremely sticky. It's there's Ireland, which is part of the EU, and then Northern Ireland, which is part of Britain, and so this Brexit agreement is putting the trade border is somewhere in the ocean. So essentially, de facto, even though Northern Ireland is part of the UK, it is operating under sort of the EU tariff zone. What the Europeans are saying, and this is under a separate protocol than the TCA that you've been describing, what the Europeans are saying is that the British are not, they're not sticking to the protocol, the terms of the agreement that they had, and so this is, and they had taken legal action against Britain. So this is yet another unresolved issue. Although the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, has said that there seems to be progress in recent days and weeks. But so far, yet another complicated sticking point where there is no resolution.
I guess we'll have to wait to find out. So they're still talking, I understand. Lisa, thanks again for joining us, and do stay safe.
My pleasure.
We're still watching The World Today. Still ahead on the program. Well, gather around, you sweet toothers. This is one candy you will not be able to get your teeth on. Stay with us to find out. Welcome back to the world today. In other developments, Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu says actions by the United States and the NATO alliance in Europe are contributing to an increased military threat. Frictions around Russia's border with Ukraine have eased in recent days after Moscow ordered a withdrawal of some troops last week. Shoigu said that Russia would act as it saw fit to ensure security at its borders. According to Shoigu, the growth of military threat is fueled by the activities of the United States and NATO in the European region. They increase the combat readiness of troops and strengthen their presence. He says military infrastructure is being modernized. The intensity of operational combat training is growing, and the American concept of 4x30 is being implemented, as well as nationalist sentiments fueled in Ukraine, which further provokes military conflicts in Donbass, including areas bordering Russia. So tension is building in Elizabeth City in North Carolina in the United States. Hundreds are demanding that the public release of video from the body-worn camera of a sheriff's deputy who shot and killed 42-year-old Andrew Brown Jr. last week. Attorneys for the Brown families say the body cam footage showed Brown had been executed and accused officials of withholding the evidence. Lawyers say the 42-year-old Brown had his hands on the steering wheel of his car when multiple deputies began firing at him in his driveway in Elizabeth City, a riverfront community near the Virginia border. The deputies continued to shoot after Brown drove his vehicle away from them, according to attorney Chantel Sherry Lessiter, who said Brown never presented a threat to the team of 7 or 8 officers at the scene.
And I'm telling y'all, when y'all go to sleep tonight, I want y'all to think about 20 seconds. How 20 seconds can change anybody's life. 20 seconds. They showed the execution for 20 seconds. So I want everybody to think about that. You know, so much for George Floyd, we talk about 9 minutes on his neck. But we want to talk about 20 seconds. 20 seconds. They shot AR. All the people that come out here.
Checking in on Myanmar, and the protests are continuing, though not on the same scale they were weeks ago. But dozens of protesters today staged a brief march in the Sang Trang neighborhood of the capital, Yangon, chanting and flashing three-finger salutes. The protests come the same day that ethnic minority Karen insurgents attacked a Myanmar army outpost near the Thai border in some of the most intense clashes since a military coup 3 months ago. Demonstrations against the military takeover have continued despite a bloody crackdown and nightly internet shutdowns. More than 750 people have been killed by security forces since the coup on February 1st. While a group that proclaims itself as a new fighting force against Myanmar's military junta has been holding what looks like military drills. We see them there in the video. This is, according to, of course, the video we're watching, in which they are seen chanting in Burmese their readiness to fight for the people. Around 120 youths are seen jogging around a muddy forest clearing in the morning light. According to Mon Mon, the founder of the group, a united defense force was made up of protesters against the February 1st coup who had fled crackdowns in which hundreds of demonstrators have been killed by security forces. Mon Mon says the group currently undergoing training included about 250 people. 20 of them are women, but the organization had around 1,000 people across Myanmar. She says training is taking place currently in an area held by the Karen National Union, one of some 24 ethnic armed organizations which have been fighting for greater autonomy for decades of Myanmar's fringes. International rights watchdog Human Rights Watch has accused Israel of pursuing policies of apartheid and persecution against Palestinians and against its own Arab minority, which amounts to crimes against humanity. HRW published its findings in a 213-page report, which it says is not aimed at comparing Israel with apartheid-era South Africa, rather at assessing whether specific acts and policies constitute apartheid as defined under international law. The Israeli government has rejected the claims as both preposterous and false and accused the HRW of harboring an anti-Israeli agenda, saying the group has sought for years to promote boycotts against Israel. General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative has welcomed the report.
We welcome this report, which has proven one more time that Israel is conducting a system of apartheid, the worst form of apartheid ever, against the Palestinian people. It's a very useful report, and we will use it to fight the system of apartheid and military Israeli occupation, and to demand international pressure on Israel to end this system of racial racism and apartheid.
Here in Africa, leader of Chad's Transitional Military Council, Mahamat Debe Itno, has addressed the nation promising an inclusive national dialogue aimed at returning the country to civilian rule within a period of 18 months. He also pledged to fight terrorism. His pledge comes amid protests against the military takeover in the capital N'Djamena and the southern city of Mondu. Reports say 2 people died today as protesters clashed with security forces. 27 others were injured. French President Emmanuel Macron has condemned the treatment of the protesters, saying he remains in favor of a peaceful transition in Chad and that France will work with international partners in the region to improve the situation in the country. He made the comments while playing host to DRC President Félix Tshisekedi in Paris. Tshisekedi himself echoed Macron's statements on Chad, saying we need to quickly restore democratic order there. And as we end the program, a large chocolate reproduction of Picasso's iconic painting, Guernica, has gone on display in the Basque town on the 84th anniversary of the bombing by Germany's Condor Legion in aid of the Francoist insurgency during the Spanish Civil War. The artwork was created by 40 Basque chocolatiers. It measures 7.7 by 3.5 meters and was shown in a recently constructed industrial building and was expected to stay in the town until it tours different Spanish and European cities. A steady stream of residents visited the reproduction, which forms part of various activities to commemorate the bombing, among them the sounding of an original air raid siren at 4 o'clock, the moment the town was bombed by German Heinkel and Junker planes. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.